Hello, I'm Josh Lohman and welcome to Alaska Filmmakers, a show dedicated to exploring the many talented individuals in the Alaska film community. Today we return to the University of Alaska Fairbanks to speak with Professor Leonard Kamerling. A member of the UAF English and Film Department, Leonard specializes in screenwriting as part of a class for the new university film program. Leonard is a graduate of the London Film School, as well as having received his MFA in creative writing from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Host DK Johnston and crew members Mike Collier and Dan Lee traveled to Fairbanks to speak to Leonard about the new film program and what led him to Alaska.
Well, Leonard, thanks for coming on the program. We appreciate having you here. First things first, what was your introduction into working in the film industry?
Film was not my first interest, but the initial cultural experiences that I had in Alaska, living in Alaska Native villages, kind of opened up a world to me that I wanted to figure out a way to portray accurately and to take that experience and the world that I saw there and find a way to bring that to the public that was did not reinforce common stereotypes, but was more like people in these communities saw themselves. So I really, when I first came to Alaska and was living in native villages, I was not interested in film. I saw myself more as a still photographer at the time. But these experiences wanted to move and they wanted to talk. And they had a lot to say. And so my interest in film kind of grew from there. The first production was a film called The People of Tununuk. That was in 1971. And that was the first opportunity that I had to go back to a Native community, specifically to make a film. And what I wanted to do was not go with a script, not go with a kind of an idea in my head or a scenario, but rather go to initiate a momentum and a collaboration and see where the openings came from that. Because I thought that most of the films that already existed that I saw, not only about Alaska Native culture, but about indigenous people in general, those films were often seemed to be about the filmmakers, or about the anthropologists, and not really about the emotional life, the inner life of people living there. So I had an idea to make films from an ongoing collaboration. And it was very unformed and in a way very naive. But I did go, and this kind of momentum took over, and I did make a film. And that film created an opening for another film, and for another one, and another one. And so from there, I really embarked on a series, on an ongoing series of collaborative films made with Native communities that would take me really through the next 20 years of my career.
Now you mentioned you moved up to Alaska. Where are you from originally?
From New York. I grew up in New York, and I came to Alaska as a VISTA volunteer in the mid-'60s. And so that experience kind of changed my worldview rather dramatically.
So now you've worked on primarily documentaries, but have you had a chance to work on the narrative as well?
I haven't done any of my own narrative films. There was a while that where I thought I really wanted to make that switch, and I considered moving to LA and following the track of being a cinematographer. But I had an internship on a feature film And that convinced me that I didn't want to go in that direction.
So what made you want to pursue a career in education as well?
I saw very early on that the kinds of films that I was interested in, which took a long time to make, these were not commercial films. And I was not going to be able to make a living from making these films in the commercial world, that they really needed to have a home. And so that's when I got into education and started my relationship with the University of Alaska.
And when did you first start teaching at UAF?
I began teaching in the mid-90s, and I became a faculty member in 2000.
So that's what we like to also touch upon, is that a lot of filmmakers have generally find a common method, with whether it be screenwriting or directing. What's kind of your approach to your documentaries when you're trying to focus on a story to tell?
That's a really good question, and I guess the answer is that I've never made a film that turned out to be the film that I thought I was making. So there's always a process of kind of evolution of, I begin it with a direction, if not kind of a story concept, but then suddenly a door opens and the story appears somewhere else. Or you discover in editing that where the true center of it is, where the true heart of your story is. And then your understanding of what you're doing deepens, and you discover that it's not the story you thought you were making, but there's another deeper story that's there. So that's been my experience, and I think that's been a very lucky and fortunate experience, because of that, every film I've done has been kind of, in a sense, life-changing in some way.
Your experience in filmmaking, do you enjoy kind of passing a lot of that knowledge that you've learned from in the field onto your students?
Yeah. I think teaching is a kind of critical component in the way that I make films, the way I see my work, because it always sharpens me when the students start to learn and have understanding about their stories. It makes me have broader understandings about how storytelling in movies works in general. So I think one of the reasons I teach is because I always learn a lot from it myself. And my most recent film, which I've just finished last month, which is a feature documentary about the Alaska composer John Luther Adams, I was lost with this film. I just couldn't find a way into this story. I cut a sample and I showed it to a group of students, and somebody came up with just an outside, oddball way of looking at it, and suddenly there was the opening, and I saw the story, and so teaching works two ways, I think. You give and you take, and that reciprocity has always been really important for me in the way that I understand my own work. Also, I reached a point in my career where I felt it was really kind of time, and not just time, but a responsibility to return, the breaks that I had. And a lot of people invested in me when I was young and, just starting my career. And I think we have a responsibility to return that.
And with the progression of today's technology, have you seen a change in the students as you've taught them over the years?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Yeah, and it's a complicated question too, because suddenly filmmaking has been democratized. It's accessible everywhere. And when I was beginning my career, that wasn't the case. Now you don't need 1,000 pounds of gear and tens of thousands of dollars to make your movie. All you need is an idea that you're in love with and burning to tell, and some craft and some access to very basic kinds of equipment. So I think there are many, many more people that are getting to discover their talent, their storytelling talent. And I think young people that are coming up today are so intensely visually literate that with just a little bit of craft, it just opens the possibility of incredible stories. Of course, there's a lot of, it makes a lot of kind of dead ends as well. And I think a very common thing that happens is people get excited about making a film, they get the stuff, they get their friends together, and they start with a lot of energy, and then, it reaches a dead end, and they don't know where to go from there. But it also puts the tools in the hands of people who turn out to be geniuses at it. And that would not have happened even 10 years ago. So that's a wonderful thing.
Now, you just completed a 2-week intensive course you just taught here at UAF. Tell us a little bit about that.
This is a kind of basic filmmaking course. That's an intensive 2-week immersion in filmmaking, and it focuses on dramatic filmmaking. And the reason is that in making short dramatic films, we can really kind of rein in the parameters so that students can be challenged and learn a lot and be ensured that they're going to have a success and and have something to show for their efforts.
Now, how long have you been teaching this class?
This is the second time that I've taught it for the festival, but I've taught a similar class for the ASRA, Alaska Summer Research Academy, which has been going on at UAF for many years. I taught that for 3 years, and that's for high school and junior high kids. And it was a similar thing of making short dramatic films.
Now, can you tell us about some of the courses that you'll be teaching here at UAF?
Well, one of my my specialty class is screenwriting. And I think that's an important subject to study for filmmakers of any genre, because at its heart, it's about visual storytelling. And the discipline of screenwriting, the way that it kind of forces you into an economy, and the way that it insists on learning to write and think visually is, and its essential nature as an exercise in structure is kind of basic training for any kind of filmmaker, any genre, any writer as well. So the students who take this class, most of them are writers in the MFA program, many people from the community, documentary filmmakers, people who just want this kind of want exposure to this discipline. The new film program at UAF, it's brand new. This is our first semester, and I think we already have 7 or 8 majors that are coming here. So how does this differ from other film programs? I think what students can get here that they can't get elsewhere is a real intimate education, a mentored education with people here who are experienced, who are working filmmakers, who are here to make sure that they succeed. And that's harder to do in the big film schools where students sometimes tend to get lost.
So I understand you're also a curator here at the university. How did you fall into that position?
I became an accidental curator because I realized that I had all of this unused footage, and I was becoming more and more concerned about what was going to happen to it because of the value that it had. And I started to work at the museum and really lobbied for this to become an official collection there. so that it would always be preserved and be there for the future. And that's how I became a curator, so quite accidentally.
And tell us about the film archive a little bit.
So all of the films that we've made with Alaska Native community since the early 70s, all of that material makes up the film collection at the museum. And we never thought when we were making films that this would have any importance, because what we wanted to do was make films. We weren't thinking of where our unused material was going to go. But as time went on and the world changed, and life in native villages changed and elders died off, this material started to become more and more and more valuable. So in the early 80s, it became an official collection of the University of Alaska Museum. And we put a lot of energy into maintaining that collection so that it is always will exist as an accurate look back, an authentic look back into Native life of this period. And I use the word authentic because of the collaborative way that it was made, because the authorship of this material was shared between the filmmakers and the people in it. So I think it gives a very particular aspect, a particular look.
Now, how do you think that the recent film incentive has affected the film community here in the state?
Well, I think since the passage of that bill, we have the real opportunity to hang on to our talented people and not lose them to other places where there's an industry and there's opportunity. So that bill is a straight and direct investment in Alaska. And now at UAF we have a film major. And the reality is that in the past we were losing all those students. All these bright students that were interested in film never even considered us. So now I'm hoping we can attract those students, they could stay in Alaska, and there's the opportunity of jobs for them as well.
Now, with the current incentive and the possibility of the extension of the incentive, what kind of future do you see for the Alaska film community as well as the film major here at UAF?
I know that it will change and it will grow. And I think that's something that's one of the real assets of this program and of it being at UAF in that it can grow, in that it's an interdisciplinary program with many courses that already exist in other departments. So just by being in the program, students get a very interdisciplinary look at film, which, as I said before, I think is very important. But I think that it's the power of mentorships that really distinguishes this, and that whether people are interested in following a technical route or developing their art behind the camera, they're interested in being in visual anthropology or ethnographic film, that this program is going to be flexible and enable all of these kind of interests in film to be kind of fermenting and people learning together and learning from each other. And again, it's this interdisciplinary kind of soup. And somebody that's interested in visual anthropology, that's interested in ethnographic film, working with students that are interested in narrative and dramatic film, I think they have a lot to learn from each other. And in more traditional programs, they would always be separated. They would follow different paths, and the disciplines make them focused in a way, and that we're not looking at that kind of focus. We're looking at how we can feed this kind of creative collaboration between disciplines and students, and I think that's pretty unique.
Now, what advice would you give to some of our young and aspiring filmmakers here in the state?
I was hoping you'd ask that. I think to be a filmmaker, to succeed today, you have to have a really diverse, broad education. And I don't think it's enough just to learn about the camera or learn about the computer. To study, you have to be able to write. You have to be able to get your ideas on paper and communicate that to other people in a compelling and dramatic way. So I think when you're out in this creative soup and you have to reach for your tools, what are you going to reach for? What's in your toolbox that is going to be there? And I think the more diverse a person's learning is, writing, literature, technical stuff, film history, science, the more that's there, the more feeds into creative energy, and the more is there for the kind of creative, intense creative problem solving that comes up in making films.
That's all the time we have for today's episode of Alaska Filmmakers. For more information about Leonard or the program at UAF, please visit our website at alaskafilmmakers.com. We'd like to thank Leonard and the University of Alaska Fairbanks for all of their hospitality, and thank all of our sponsors and supporters for making this season of Alaska Filmmakers possible. Join us next week when we travel back to Fairbanks to visit with actress, screenwriter, director, Princess Lu Kai. And remember, everyone has a story to tell.